a very common matrices: effort variance, schedule variance, and scope change, which you might have used in the course of your career in software testing. So we would look into all of these matrices in detail. So first of all, we'll start with the manual testing matrices, and the first matrix is test case productivity. So as I described before, the test case productivity metric would give us a test case writing productivity based on which we can have a conclusive remark. I would explain it in more detail. The formula for calculating the test case productivity is the total raw test steps divided by the effort which we had put in order to create those steps and multiplied by steps per hour. So I can tell you this example, the particular formula with the help of an example. Let's take the example of these test cases. We have 5 test cases, and each test case has these number of steps. So for example, test case 1 has 30 steps, test case 2 has 32 steps, 3 has 40, 4 has 36, and 5 has 45. So in total, we have a total 183 steps. And the effort that is required for writing this 183 steps is, let's suppose it's 8 hours. So we can easily calculate the test case productivity by just dividing the number of steps divided by the number of hours. So since we took 8 hours to develop 183 test steps, so our productivity is 22.8. Or you can say that we can actually write 23 steps per hour. And then once we have developed this particular figure, then we can compare it with the same metric for a period of time. For example, right now we are sitting in June. We have a device rate of 23 steps per hour. However, in the month of May, we were able to work only 20. We were able to produce only 20 steps per hour, and in the month of April, we were doing 19. So gradually, this shows that we are improving in our execution, in our scripting process month by month. Moving on further, the next metric that we can talk about is test execution summary. So test execution summary would give us a classification of the test cases with respect to the status, along with the reason, if available, for various test cases. It gives a statistical view of the release. So this view that is being displayed belongs to a particular release. So we can select the data for the number of test cases which were executed with this particular status. That is the pass status, the fail, and the reason for failure also, and then unable to test. So there might be some ways that we are not able to test. For example, we due to some kind of time crunch, or there was a defect which was not fixed, it was postponed. There was some kind of setup issue, or some tests were taken out of scope. So due to this, there might be some of the test cases that are out of scope. So in all, we can find out what is the test execution summary for, and then we can also compare them. So the next one is defect acceptance. So this metric determines the number of valid defects that the testing team has identified during the execution. The formula for this is that the defect acceptance is equal to the number of valid defects divided by the total number of defects multiplied by 100, since we are calculating a percentage. So if we see the trend, so this is we can compare the trends month by month. That, for example, in the month of April, the defect acceptance rate was 80%. It increased to 90% in the month of May, and then in June it declined a bit to around 89%. So we can have this kind of trend analysis done for the defect acceptance rate. So in this particular rate, the higher the number of defect acceptance rate, it is good for the organization. Now the next is defect rejection. So this metric determines the number of defects that were rejected during the execution. So the formula for this is number of defects which were rejected divided by total number of defects into 100. That is also a very simple formula which is quite similar to the defect acceptance rate. And then based on this analysis, we can have a trend analysis also, which can show us month by month. That, for example, in the month of April, we had a 10% of defect rejection, which increased to 12.5% in May, and then reduced a little bit to 12 in the month of June. So, so we need to, our main target is to reduce this particular defect rejection rate to a minimum. The next metric is bad fix defect. So there are some defects whose resolution would give rise to some new defects. For example, we have logged a defect in module A, and once that defect was fixed, the fix for this defect uncovered 2 more defects in the same module, which were previously working fine. So that is a result of a bad fix. So this metric determines the effectiveness of the defect resolution process. That is, defect resolution process is it effective or it is not effective. So the formula for this is the number of bad defects fixed divided by the total number of valid defects into 100. So this is also calculated as a percentage. Then we can have this trend analysis that in the month of April there was a 0 bad defect rate. It increased to 2 in the month of May, and then it gradually decreased to 1 in the month of June. So this was the bad fix defect. The next metric is test execution productivity. So this is the most important metric which I feel that gives us a very good result. So this metric gives the test case execution productivity, which on further analysis can give some conclusive result. So the formula for this is it is the total number of test cases executed divided by the execution effort in hours multiplied by 8. Since we need to execute, we need to find out the numbers per day. So we are taking an average working rate of around 8 hours in a day, and therefore we are taking this, we are multiplying this by 8. So moving forward, so what is total number of test cases executed? So there is another formula for calculating this total number of execution rate, that is TE. So it is equal to the base test case plus we have another category. For example, we have this number of test cases retested. So this is T into 0.33. This is another string which I am just showing you over here. So the base test case is the number of test cases executed at least 1. So this is the full test case which is executed. T1 is the number of test cases retested with 71% to 100% of the total test case steps. For example, we are able to test at least more than 71% of the test steps in a particular test case. So we classify it as T1. Then we have T.66, which determines that the number of test cases retested with from 41% to 70% of the total test case steps. So we actually, all this is a averaging factor. So T.66 is an averaging factor, and the next factor is T.33, wherein it determines that number of test cases which were retested with less than 40% of the test case steps. So what we are doing is we are just calculating a weighted average of all the execution rates to give us a great detailed information. So the test case execution rate would be the base test case plus the product of T33 into 0.33. We are averaging it out. Then plus T66 into 0.66. This is also averaging, and then T1 into 1. So this would give us adequate rate. So I can explain this with the help of an example also. So suppose this is a sample of 5 test cases, and if you see the second column, it says that base run effort, that is in terms of hours. Test case 1 is 2 hours, 2 is 1.3 hours, 3 is 2.3, 4 is 2, and 5 is 2.15. Then we have this rerun status. So in the first round, we executed around 40% to 70% of the test case steps of test case 1. That's why we have defined it as T.66. In the second test case, we were not able to execute more than 40% of the total test steps. That's why we had defined it as T.33. For test case number 3 and 4, we were able to achieve the retesting rate of more than 71% to 100% of the total test steps. So this is the run for the first run. The similar data is displayed for the second run, and the similar is for the third run. So for every status, we would have the effort in hours. Example test case 1 for the first run, test case 1 took 1 hour, 2 took just 30 minutes, 0.3 hours, 3 took around 1.2 hours, and 4 took around 2 hours. So this has all the calculation done for 3 test runs. So now if we accumulate these calculations, so we can see the base test case has 5 runs. T1 has 4 runs, T.66 has 2 runs, 0.33 is 1, and then we can calculate the total effort in hours. In order to give you a deep understanding of how this T1 came out was 4. So how can we calculate this as 4? We can just simply count that T1 was done in number 3, test case number 3 in first run, test case number 4 in first run, then test case number 2 in second run, and then test case number 1 in third run. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can easily get a figure of 4. Similarly, T.66 is being displayed only 2 times, 1 and 2. So that is the value of 2. And 0.33 is just being displayed 1 time. So that we have calculated. And then we have calculated the total hours, the effort in hours belonging to all of these values. And then this total comes out to be 19.7. So once we have find the total effort in hours, we can just simply put in the formula that we had described in the last slide, this particular formula, and then we can get this result. So this is TE is equal to 5 plus 1 into 4 plus 2 into 0.66 plus 1 into 0.33, which comes out to be 10.65. And then we can simply divide it by 19.7, which we have the total effort, and then multiply by 8, and then we can have a rate of 4.3 execution per day. So over here we can find out the productivity rate of the test execution. For example, one person can execute 4.3 test cases in 1 day, as per this particular example. Once we have this figure, then we can compare it with a trend if we see from the past 1 quarter. For example, in the month of April, a person was able to execute only 2 test cases. Then in the month of May, it increased its productivity from 2 test cases to 4 test cases, and then in the month of June, that is in the current month, a person is able to execute 4.3 test cases. So this is a very important metric, and which works wonders in most of the countries, most of the companies where I've seen the implementation. The next one is test efficiency. So this metric determines the efficiency of the testing team in identifying the defects. It also indicates the defects missed out during the testing phase, which migrated to the next phase. So this is also very good metric if you want to find the failure rate of the testing team. For example, in this particular formula, we have this test efficiency to DT. DT means number of valid defects which were identified during the testing, divided by the total number of defects, that is the number of valid defects plus the number of defects which were identified by the user. For example, in the UAT phase. So these were the number of defects identified in the testing phase divided by the total number of defects both in the testing as well as the UAT phase or the acceptance testing phase, and then we derive a percentage by multiplying by 100. So this is the formula for calculating the test efficiency. And the test efficiency should be a very high figure. It should be somewhere in more than 95%. In that case, it is good that the defect leakage is just around 5%. And the less the leakage, the more it is better. The greater the test efficiency, the more it is better. Now moving forward, we can have this trend analysis in the test efficiency that in the month of April, it was 98%. Then in the month of May, there was no defect leakage and the test efficiency was 100%. That is a very good figure. And in the month of June, it came down to 97%. So we can have this kind of RC activities, that is the root cause analysis for this by taking into account this type of matrices, that what can be done to achieve a rate of 100% and why this particular rate falls from 100% to 97%. So we can do a root cause analysis for these defects. The next one is defect severity index. So this matrix determines the quality of the product under test and at the time of the release also. And this is based on that we can take a decision for releasing the product or not. So this is also a good matrix wherein it tells us what is the defect severity index, and then it can be calculated by a summation of severity index into number of valid defects for this particular severity. The severity index can be simply a number from 1 to 5, ranging 5 to be a very critical defect, and the 1 is less in severity. So this can be divided into two parts. One is for the all status and the other would be just the open status. So let's take the example of the first one, that is the DSI for all status defects. So this will include the defects for all the status. It might be open, it might be new, it might be closed, and it would take this analysis for all of these status defects. So for example, there were around 5 defects which were low severity, 7 defects were of a high severity, 8 defects were, 7 for medium, 8 for high, and then 10 defects were the critical severity defects. So the DSI for, if you put these figures into the formula which I had explained in the earlier slide, so you can get the DSI for all status as 2.8. The next part is the DSI for open status defects. In this, the formula is that severity index multiplied by the number of open valid defects for this severity. We will exclude all the defects which have been closed. We would also exclude all the invalid defects. So what are the current defects which are open as of now? So we can see that the DSI for open status is 3 in this particular example, which have 1, 1, 1 in a low, medium, and high, and there are 3 in the critical stage. And then we can have this kind of analysis trend that all status was 2.8 and open status was 3. So currently we have more critical defects which are still open, and then we need to reduce this particular count